Ladies and gentlemen, coming soon, a podcast you've all been waiting for. The movie podcast to end all movie podcasts. A podcast that discusses and critiques the best of the best and the worst of the worst movies playing at a theater near you. With a host whose opinions have been deemed as fact by your favorite fact checkers. And that's a fact. Without further ado, let me introduce you to the movie maestro, the tyrant of theater, the gumshoe of review, the man that makes theater employees and Hollywood execs shiver by his mere presence. Ladies and gentlemen, the judge, the jury, the sultan of cinema, Justin Henson. Welcome to the Movie Wire.
Welcome to this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I'm your host, Justin Henson, and welcome to the show. We have a big show to kick off this week with 3 brand new reviews, including a review and a spoiler-free look at the new addition to the DC Universe. This week on the show, the world needed a hero, and it got Dwayne Johnson in the new DC movie Black Adam, and Let the Murder and Conspiracy Begin in Amsterdam. And finally, the 5th installment to the horror anthology series VHS 99. Ready for my verdict? Let's get into it.
Out of the windows to watch, a roar and a burst of flame.
The Movie Wire podcast.
There it is. We just need people like me.
The podcast for hot and trendy movies. The Wire.
And here we go.
It's 1930, and 2 friends, Bert, who is a doctor played by Christian Bale, and Harold, who is a lawyer played by John David Washington, witness a murder of a client that sought them out for help with investigating the death of her father. The pair are framed for the murder and put in the middle of uncovering one of the most outrageous plots in American history.
Harold, I don't know what you think you're doing. Excuse me. Hello. Got a dead white man in a box. Not even a casket. Doesn't even have a top on it. In a pine box of old wood. Who do you think's gonna get in trouble here?
Do me a favor. Try to be optimistic. You don't get here without things starting a long time ago. So, 2 soldiers and a nurse found ourselves in
Amsterdam.
We formed a pact, and we swore to protect each other, no matter what.
Tax the rich.
We find ourselves in a situation where we're accused of killing someone, which is not true.
Rich no more.
You and Woodman fled the scene.
The killer pointed at us.
We didn't do anything. Why would you possibly think that was us?
Well, there's not too many people that fit the description of a doctor looking for his eye on the ground with his black attorney.
Columbia Law School.
Life is funny.
We need someone to help us to find the truth.
My friend was killed because of something monstrous that he had seen.
This is all turning out to be a lot larger than any of us. You're gonna have to take my lead getting out of this. I had to stab a guy. I had to hit a lady with a brick one time.
What?
It's a long story, but with you 2, it'll be a cakewalk.
These are dangerous times.
You be careful.
I'm about to do something that could cost me my life.
The cuckoo is in the nest, and the cuckoo's about to be trapped.
Cuckoo? This is one of the finest innovations from Zurich. It removes all pain.
Guys like me, we have to turn to booze and morphine, and that can lead to addiction. Oh, that's fast. That is advanced.
Right when the movie starts, writer and director David O. Russell makes it clear with making the words, "some of this happened," appear on the screen. There are a lot of adaptations to screen, either based on or inspired by true stories. The based on and inspired by are usually used strategically based on how much the film takes from the original story. We have a new one now, and that's the wording of "some of these things happen." Amsterdam is in fact an event that did happen, but there is a reason the movie puts these words on screen. Amsterdam is more fiction than fact, even though yes, there was a conspiracy as in the movie, but the characters are completely fictionalized and just about everything else in the movie is so over-dramatized. It shouldn't even use the term "some of these things happen." What it really should say is that we took a situation that happened and made a fictional telling of the story, just in time for the end of the year Oscar run. The film again is about three friends, Bert, Harold, and Valerie. Valerie's a nurse that healed Bert and Harold during the war, played by Margot Robbie. They make a pact during World War I to help support each other after the war. The three friends spend their time in Amsterdam until Valerie takes off without notice, which leaves Bert and Harold to move back to the States, where Bert continues as a doctor, but a very damaged one, and Harold has become a lawyer. Harold brings Bert into one of his cases where his client Liz, played by Taylor Swift, suspects foul play in the death of her father. And then it is followed by the murder of Liz, in which Harold and Bert are framed for. This throws the three friends back together in a conspiracy that the film thinks is too smart for its own good. Amsterdam is an absolute mess of a movie to the point I don't even know where to start. But let's start here. There is no question that the cast is absolutely and utterly amazing. Other than Christian Bale, Margot Robbie, and John David Washington, we also have Chris Rock, Robert De Niro, Mike Myers, and Rami Malek. And solely based on their performances makes this movie easier to witness what I'm watching on screen. But during the second half of the film, even that isn't enough to keep my attention. Writer-director David O. Russell must have had a really good sales pitch to get the cast that he has in this film. Even the dialogue is very confusing on what the movie was trying to be. You can tell David O. Russell wanted to go for a subtle humor but also chaotic tone. And our cast, you can tell, went into this intention as well, given Christian Bale's overly animated character. And Chris Rock's comic relief hints at the movie's intent, but it wasn't the outcome in the final product. Amsterdam's pacing, dialogue, and editing reminds me of my 14-month-old son when we go to the park. We're walking towards a swing, he sees a leaf or a stick. We stop to pick up said leaf or stick. We start walking again, and there's another leaf or stick to be picked up. Repeat 5 or 6 more times, and 2 hours later, we have reached the swings, and he only enjoys the swings for about 1 minute and 17 seconds. The film is all over the place. It's like David O. Russell kept seeing a squirrel outside while he was writing this mess of a movie. It comes across feeling fragmented in its dialogue delivery, and its editing almost the entire runtime. I can see where Russell wanted this to add to the chaotic feel, and those of you that know the movies I like, I love a smart, chaotic movie. But this is not it. This is not the chaotic I enjoy. This is like walking into a daycare where nobody took a nap and spiking the snacks with Pepsi sticks. There is no organization to Russell's thought process here, which makes the movie confusing, and even more so when you have a runtime of almost 2 hours, and your messaging still isn't making sense. It feels like Russell didn't even know what he wrote and didn't know how to direct his own nonsense. The first 30 minutes of the film are enjoyable and unique as we get to know the characters and backstory to their friendship, but that's short-lived after they have no chemistry on screen after that, and they come across as cardboard around each other, which makes the movie feel a lot longer than the runtime. There's a scene where we have Robbie's character, Valerie, reunite with Bert and Harold after years of being apart, and she's in a unique situation. Russell doesn't even take the time to allow the characters to react to the reunion. It comes across like a business meeting, or the characters are anticipating a timeshare pitch. The film does succeed at 2 levels, and sadly, I wish it was in a better movie, and that is the cinematography by Emmanuel Lubezki, which is no surprise to this. He is responsible for some really brilliant films, such as Gravity, The Revenant, Children of Men, and Sleepy Hollow. The film does look fantastic, and it is actually more appeasing to look at for the entire runtime than our stellar cast of characters. And secondly, the fantastic score by Daniel Pemberton, which should be nominated for an Academy Award with his work in this. Hopefully the Academy ignores the dumpster fire of a film this is and gives credit to a score that Pemberton did for his work. That also includes the original song by Giveon, Time. These are 3 talents that I would not be disappointed to see when it comes to award times. Amsterdam is a film that was way too confident for its own good and relied on the true story aspect that really has next to nothing to do with a true story except for the idea of it, and the fully loaded talented cast that has nothing really to work with. If it wasn't for the brilliant cinematography and music to this film, it would have been a total loss. Russell should give thanks to Lebesgue, Giveon, and Pemberton for giving it half a star more than I wanted to give it. I'm giving Amsterdam 1.5 stars. Before we get into the rest of the show, don't forget to check out my reviews for movies that just hit streaming and are available to rent or buy now, including Bros, Bullet Train, Bodies, 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 Spirit Halloween the Movie, Jeepers Creepers Reborn, Nope, and Rob Zombie's The Munsters. You can find those reviews on my previous episodes, and just a reminder, if you haven't yet, make sure you hit follow or subscribe and leave me a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. And make sure you follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Movie Wire Show. Now let's hear from a podcast that always puts me in a good mood and puts a smile on my face. Let's hear from the Wilsons at the Super Familiar with the Wilsons podcast.
The Super Familiar with the Wilsons podcast. You know that family whose house you hung out in when you were a kid? The house was a little loud and chaotic, but always fun, and sometimes felt more home than home. Well, that's us.
We're the Wilsons, and we welcome you into our podcast with silly chat, ridiculous games, and interviews with interesting people.
Like a spin doctor. The Super Familiar with the Wilsons podcast.
Welcome home.
Based on the DC Comics, nearly 5,000 years after Black Adam, played by Dwayne Johnson, was bestowed with the almighty powers of the Egyptian gods and imprisoned just as quickly. Black Adam is freed from his earthly tomb, ready to unleash his unique form of justice on the modern world.
Black Adam, what have your powers ever given to you? Nothing but heartache.
I was a slave until I died. Then I was reborn a god. My son sacrificed his life to save me. Open fire! Now, I kneel before no one. In this world, there are heroes. I feel the pain in my city wherever I go. And there are villains. Heroes don't kill people. Well, I do.
My vision has shown me the future. You have two choices. You can be the destroyer of this world, or you can be its savior. That's up to you.
Behind you! Did he just catch a rocket?
He got a rocket.
Now, it's hard not to compare how DC and Marvel movies run their course when it comes to building a universe. Marvel has spent years to build up its characters with individual films. Some good, some bad, but the anticipation on where the characters will land in the bigger scheme of things is what keeps fans hooked. When it comes to DC films, it's like they brought a motorcycle to a track race. They try and take as many shortcuts as they can to attempt a Marvel-esque kind of feeling, and most of the time, they fail. The shortcuts land to unmemorable characters, sloppy writing, and in just an overpacked, overpriced knockoff that you would find at a flea market. Black Adam is no different, except it proves my point even more so than any DC movie thus far. I was a big comic book reader growing up, and to some extent I still am, but I was never a Black Adam reader, so upfront and honest, I knew very little of the character of Black Adam going into this movie. So with that said, this review will be strictly on the content of the movie without comparison to the original material. And in all honesty, after watching Black Adam, it really didn't tempt me to come home and seek out the Black Adam comic books. I had more of a curiosity before I went into the film about this character. Now, I have followed the news over the years of Dwayne Johnson's journey to finally appear in the Black Adam suit, and it all started in 2007 with basic talks but not confirmed until 2014, where Black Adam was officially announced. Originally set to play in the original Shazam in 2019, the plans obviously changed to have Black Adam have his own film. There is no doubt that Black Adam will appear in a Shazam film, whether that's the upcoming sequel, Shazam Fury of the Gods, as a cameo, or further down the road. Black Adam does have a post-credit scenes that I will not spoil, but I was expecting something a little different when it rolled. But it's a good post-credit scene, and it's worth hanging around for, even though it's brief and simplistic, like most of them are. But it does add a little bit curiosity of where this franchise will go. So with that said, with no in-depth knowledge of the comic Black Adam, how is it as a film? Well, not good. Not good at all. Black Adam reminded me at times of watching a made-for-TV movie on the Sci-Fi Channel. And that is the best way I can describe it, and that was my feeling walking out of the movie. The underlying tone of Black Adam, without fully knowing the comic, is that the movie wanted to portray an anti-hero and the balance between good and bad. And what would a man with superpowers look like when he has a background of loss and trauma? A character that has to balance the darkness and a hint of human good. The tone of the film doesn't support this, as it all seems amateurish and cartoonish. There is no contrast in tone to support the character and the dialogue of being light and dark, or even past painful trauma. It is so simplistic that it relies on Dwayne Johnson's mere presence to carry the character. And this doesn't work. He has very limited speaking lines, and given the background of a superhuman that has been imprisoned for 5,000 years and his background of loss, the film never truly deep dives into this with Black Adam's character. There is no personality to Black Adam whatsoever. The studio should have stuck to the original plan of just having him co-star in one of the Shazam films. When it comes to depth of the character, we get as much depth as we do with, say, a villain in a DC or Marvel film, and that's pretty much it. We don't have a huge focus on his persona. For over a 2-hour runtime, we get a basic rundown of not just Black Adam, but also the rest of the jam-packed heroes in the film, such as Dr. Fate, played by Pierce Brosnan, Noah Centineo as Atom Smasher, Quintessa Swindle as Cyclone, and the most disappointing performance of them all, Aldous Hodge as Hawkman. Such a talented cast, but it is wasted in just a quick run-through of these characters with no background, and we hopefully hope it leads to cool action scenes to make up for the lack of to little knowledge of these characters, except for what the filmmakers want us to know. Hodge as Hawkman was an even more disappointing performance that helped support my feeling of this just being a made-for-TV movie. He in no way is a horrible actor, let me make that clear. He has some great performances such as Hidden Figures, Straight Outta Compton, and Clemency. I can't even explain or understand his motivation for his performance in this. It is over the top, cheesy, and felt like it should have been part of a 60s Batman TV show. The only thing missing from his performance was the bang, pop, whoa, smash signs in the background. The film again is loaded with a lot of characters and we get very little screen time with them, and we know absolutely nothing about them. This is where DC films need to stop and take a breath and slow down. These characters either needed to have their own movie or more screen time to have the audience really engage and attach ourselves to them, but we never get the chance to do so, which adds to pure boredom and a careless effect on what they do because we don't know them well enough to really care. The movie makes it apparent that the writers, directors, and filmmakers, even across the board in all roles, are out of their element in this, from showing way too many scenes where we see an overuse of slow motion shots, lighting that shows off how amateurish some of the costumes are, and dialogue that is so basic and cliche enough to make you roll your eyes and give nothing to attach ourselves to any of the characters on screen. The film was written by John Collett-Serra, whose previous work includes 2005's House of Wax, 2009's Orphan, and more recently, Jungle Cruise. Serra finds trouble finding his footing here, where it just feels like he's struggling to find a vision for the work, and he just gives up and tries to power through to get the film done with no set of standards nor vision of what he wants us to view. It just feels like a chaotic mess, and it comes across generic and sloppy. You can really feel his stress while making this movie, and I'll get into that in just a second, which most of his experience must not have been a positive one because you can feel it by how sloppy this direction really is. For example, there are really some hard edits that happen happen here throughout the film that are extremely noticeable, where you can tell something is missing in a scene or something that was cut really, really fast. You can tell there are cuts that are just super sloppy. The cuts are so harsh, it almost feels like a transition from a PowerPoint presentation. The film was edited by John Lee and Michael L. Sale, where John Lee has an impressive resume to assisting in the editing department, but this is his first big project. And we take Michael L. Sale, who has a little bit more experience, but his experience lies on less challenging pictures, more so in the comedy genre, such as Tammy, We're the Millers, and Bridesmaids. There is a real problem with the editing here, and I usually don't talk about editing in my reviews, but it is distracting how noticeable this is. It is so fragmented. The film also has writers that we can now struggle during this production. We have writers Adam Steakhill, whose previous works have been 2010's Due Date, Alvin and the Chipmunks, The Road Trip, and 2019's Rampage, and newcomers Rory Haynes and Shohrib Nashirvani. The writing is basic, cliche, and short when our characters deliver it. There is nothing complex as one shouldn't expect from a film like that, and to Black Adam's credit, it does not try to be. But there is basic dialogue to be heard in a popcorn film like this. Then there's below basic to almost a childlike vocabulary, where it's too simple and too short. It's hard to care or pay attention to the characters. And that's why the filmmakers fully load us with a lot of CGI special effects and explosions that you would expect from a big budget superhero movie. A lot of things that just go boom. Just because it's a superhero film doesn't mean the characters can't say something interesting. Let's take Dwayne Johnson as Black Adam, whom we get more close-up shots and full body focus of him without saying anything versus when he does have lines. His dialogue is very limited in this film, and the filmmakers rely and focus on the spectacle of Dwayne Johnson as Black Adam versus having him speak. Johnson is completely absent from any kind of acting in this movie and with limited lines. I am almost insulted for Dwayne Johnson for the way they took any sort of uniqueness away from his character, and you can almost hear the director in the background say, "Shh, Dwayne, too much talking. Let's keep the script of 5 words, please." And action. When looking holistically at the creative team involved, we can really see the contradiction in experience with all the creators involved while watching Black Adam. It was almost like watching another Alvin and the Chipmunks sequel, but with superhumans. Black Adam relies heavily on its making a visual spectacle of itself, and again, there is nothing wrong with that if you're trying to be just an entertaining popcorn flick. It doesn't hide that, and it makes it more than obvious to the audience. The special effects and CGI are spot on when it comes to the integration to Black Adam and the other superhumans, but where the film starts to go into sci-fi original movie made-for-TV territory is the surround effects that look really artificial and are not believable. With the exception of the last 15-20 minutes of Black Adam, the climax is actually very pleasing. If you take out the design of our main villain and the place he spawns his powers from, which it looked like it came out of the 1997 Spawn movie, but the final battle is visually pleasing, I will give it that. But this is a movie that will not age well with the effects put into it. Black Adam was meant to be a completely different movie that shows a better origin story than what we were shown. Instead, we are offered something that feels rushed and unfulfilling, and when we finally see Black Adam in current times, we don't really see the rage he has had from his past and really see his anger to truly be invested in the character. We don't get that we have this anti-hero that we should feel intimidated by, but we get this anti-hero with a painful past that the writers are supposed to sell us on, but he just goes from mild to mild. There's no extreme with him, except for what the special effects try to envision it with. There is no risk taken with the character. Instead, he comes across as a grumpy guy in some tights that flies around a lot. Black Adam is a movie that the filmmakers took no risk on the character, played it way too safe to just bring us another generic DC movie that is completely forgettable. This will be a one-time watch for most. Some people will enjoy this movie and find it entertaining. Black Adam is yet another DC flick that knows what it wants to be, and even at times falls below that line from popcorn flick to made-for-TV flick. To be considered for a popcorn flick, at least the technical aspects should be there to be visually pleasing, and at times it is. But most of the time it's lazy and predictable, the slow motion shots drove me nuts, and it has horrible edits. It distracts from even the on-screen spectacle. And again, many people will enjoy Black Adam and find it entertaining. You know what? That's okay. I can see the appeal, and at times it can be entertaining. I would call this a popcorn flick because I did something I haven't done in a while. I got out of my seat in the middle of the movie and went to the lobby and got some popcorn to keep my mind occupied until the movie was over. I will give some credit to Black Adam. Most films like these usually start off strong and tend to get weaker with each sequel. At least this decided to set their bar extremely low, so there's only one way to go, which is up. I'm giving Black Adam 1.5 stars. It gets so hard to keep track and even have time to read all the trending topics on the web. Now there's a new app to help with all of those problems. Newsly is an audio app for iOS and Android. It picks up web articles about the most trending topics on the web at any given moment and reads them to you in a natural human voice. For the first time in the history of the internet, the entire web becomes listenable. Browse articles from topics you choose and start playing. You can follow any topic as specific as you like, from sports, science, to Bitcoin. You can even follow Kardashian. It will find you the latest articles and read them to you out loud. And guess what? They have podcasts as well. Explore trending podcasts from over 50 countries. The Movie Wire is now a featured podcast on the Newsly app. Download and use Newsly for free now. The link will be in the description of this episode. You can also use one of my promo codes that you will find in the description as well to get you a 1-month free premium subscription. Stop scrolling, start listening, download Newsly today. Yet another entry into the VHS franchise. Witness a hell vision of 1999 as social isolation, analog technology, and disturbing home videos fuse into a nightmare of found footage savagery.
Remember, fresh souls taste the best.
Welcome back! This is a very special episode.
Spend the night in a coffin.
Lily! Lily!
The faster you breathe, the faster you use up your air, so you can't panic.
We have ourselves a winner!
Play or die! Play or die!
Just like its predecessors, VHS 99 follows a string of short horror stories surrounding one main theme. I always found the VHS films to be an entertaining, fun late-night watch, with, of course, the first VHS being the strongest. In this entry, we get 5 brand new stories that at times feels a little out of pace, and makes a film come across extremely short. Now, the order of the movies when you only have 5 films to present is key. Just like when musicians organize songs in their albums and music order in their concert performances, the order has to be there to keep the audience engaged. You don't want to have a rock band open with their greatest hit and then close out the concert with a slow ballad. Now that would just be silly. Now VHS 99 was a quick follow-up to 2021's VHS 94, with VHS 99 only in production for 5 months, which isn't necessarily a bad thing given the multiple directors and stories being told. But where you can really feel it is in the pacing during the telling of each tale, which each one feels like they're running a race to make a deadline. Now I'll give a rundown and some quick thoughts for each film, and then I will give my review. The placement of the films are well organized and balanced, putting the weakest of the 5 first. We are introduced to the first film entitled Shredding, directed by Maggie Levine, where a rock band breaks into the ruins of an abandoned art collective where the prior band met their death in a freak accident. This one kicked off the movie with an extremely dark tone and was hard to follow along. It really could have utilized colors or the art focus and even using direct lighting to really show the audience what the filmmakers wanted us to see. The story was unique enough and it would move briskly, but it was hard to keep attention to something that was trying to portray an analog tone and how dark it was to really engage the story. The next film brings the audience back up to really dive into a true fear, which is being buried alive, in Suicide Bid, directed by Johannes Roberts, where a girl agrees to take on a hazing ritual for a sorority by being buried alive with a terrifying twist. This is a story that takes full advantage of our internal fears, but really has some really dumb character decisions. But there's enough here to really keep us on edge by exaggerating and understanding how dumb some of our characters really are, and makes us believe that they are just that. The story just doesn't focus on the buried alive aspect, but pushes the danger further, and that makes this one of the strongest entries of the stories in VHS 99. Now, we can't have a VHS film without something that makes our stomachs queasy, and that's when the short Ozzy's Dungeon, directed by Flying Lotus, comes to play. A kid's game show host is forced to play his own games after a former contestant is brutally injured and disfigured playing one of the games on his show. Now, those of you that remember these kids' game shows from the 90s, this will hit you at the center of your core, and you won't look at the kids' game shows the same way. While Lotus goes for a gritty, nauseating feel, the short film tends to go off in a different direction that just doesn't feel like it fit. Even though gritty and nauseating, the short does a successful job at creating the feel it wanted to do, and dabbles at taking something that's familiar to a lot of us and give it the opposite tone of darkness. The ending, even though unfitting, and the short does a great job of creating an atmosphere of darkness to something we take as a familiar, bright innocence. Next, we have the shortest short of VHS 99, but it is also my favorite, and that's Gawkers, directed by Tyler McClary, where we have a group of horny teenagers who spy on the girl next door and find the terrifying truth they all will regret. Without giving anything away, this again takes a human act of temptation and turns it sideways. Where the film is successful is that it doesn't over-dramatize the camera movements, it acts accordingly to how the cast is reacting. It's a brief short that I wish could have been longer to really add some build-up to what the climax was, and to truly focus on the theme of temptation and the cause and effect of our teenage boys' decisions. And finally, we have the grand finale, To Hell and Back, directed by Joseph Winter and Vanessa Winter. Two filmmakers are asked to document a summoning ritual on the eve of Y2K, and they're accidentally transported to another dimension resembling hell. That's when a tormented soul guides them in escaping from its demons and back to their world. This was a smart move to end on this one. To Hell and Back definitely has the story, the look, uniqueness to really end on a high note when it comes to filmmaking. Is To Hell and Back scary? No, but the situation and the overall look is intriguing to look at, and our two filmmakers' journey through this world does keep us on edge and where the VHS is going to take us on this final short. Though not scary and the ending is predictable, the world they created in this segment is well shot, not too over the top, and it's just plain entertaining. VHS 99 isn't the strongest in the franchise, but it's definitely not the weakest. The cutscenes between the shorts do get a little obnoxious and seem to go longer than some of the films, just because of how pointless they feel. Each film at least had something memorable in it, with the exception of the film Shredding. It's not going to stand out among horror films, but it is a fun time anticipating what the next short was going to bring to the table. The VHS series is an average at best, but it's a great film to view in October to get ready for Halloween, especially with a group of friends. The film is held back by the pointless cutscenes in between films, and the film seemed to be rushed to make a deadline, but you know what? It was a fun watch. I'm giving VHS 99 2.5 stars. And that's a cut on this week's edition of The Movie Wire. Again, thank you all for listening, and thank you for your support. You can also show support by following me on Instagram and Twitter and leaving me a review. Until next week, do me a favor and make sure you stay for after the credits to show the respect for those that put their blood, sweat, and tears into making a feature film. And make sure you support your local movie theaters.
A verdict has been made on this episode of The Movie Wire by your host, Justin Henson. He thanks you for listening to the show. You can follow Justin on Instagram and Twitter at Movie Wire Show, or visit his website, www.themoviewire.com. Oh, and don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we will see you at the movies.
Thank you for bringing me to the movies.